All right, now let's talk about operant conditioning. As I said, operant conditioning is the type of learning that B.F. Skinner became famous for. It's also known as trial and error learning. And again, with this situation, basically the animal is forming associations between a stimuli and a response. So the learning that a particular behavior has a particular consequence. And we can actually associate responses with stimuli that don't naturally occur together. And so we can make behaviors that are not naturally occurring otherwise too. And this is the way that we get animals to do unusual behaviors, say commercials and things like that, something that an animal wouldn't normally do in its day-to-day life or interactions. So a couple of things that we have to keep in mind when we're looking at operant conditioning. There's the law of effect, and this is going to be really important when we're looking at what types of learning that we want to have in place. And so essentially what we're seeing here is that the behavior that results in pleasant consequence is going to be strengthened or increases in frequency. It pays to do it, so you're going to repeat the behavior. A behavior that results in no consequence or has a neutral response is going to be weakened and decreases in frequency because it doesn't pay off. So there's no point in doing it again. Additionally, a behavior that results in an unpleasant consequence is also going to be weakened or decreased in frequency because the animal is afraid of the consequence. They don't want it to happen again. So we have the same consequence occurring or frequency change occurring for both a neutral consequence as well as a negative one. But the behavior potentially might decrease in frequency faster if we use something negative. But again, looking at the overall situation, if we're trying to make a behavior decrease in frequency, and we can do so by having a neutral response, why do we have to go to the unpleasant one to begin with? The second very important thing to remember is that the interpretation of the consequence, good, neutral, or negative, is based on the cat's perception, not our intention. And this becomes vitally important when we start to say, oh, but I just really wanted to reach over and pet him because he looks so soft and I wanted to make friends with him. Then we get hissing and scratching as a response. We intended it to be nice, but the cat did not perceive it as so. A couple of additional important definitions is we're going to start breaking down the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. And so we've all heard of positive punishment and positive reinforcement, but we also have negative reinforcement and negative punishment. So to break these down and to make sense of these definitions, because we aren't going to understand them to use them, look at it one word at a time. So when we're talking about reinforcement, really what's happening is anything that increases the probability of a behavior occurring. When we're applying punishment, it's going to be anything that decreases the probability of the behavior occurring. When you add the qualifier of the positive or negative, think about it like simple arithmetic. We're either adding something to the situation with positive, or we're taking something away. So when we put all of these together, we now have our 4 quadrants. So positive reinforcement, we are adding something, food, to the situation to increase the frequency of the behavior. Positive punishment, we are adding something to the situation to decrease the frequency of the behavior. Inherently, this is usually something considered unpleasant by the animal. With negative reinforcement, we are taking something away to increase the frequency of the behavior. Typically, this is taking something inherently unpleasant away. And with negative punishment, we're taking something away to decrease the frequency of the behavior. And so one of the prime examples of negative punishment is taking away your attention when an animal is doing something obnoxious to seek attention. And it's really, really important for us to understand these definitions because positive punishment is not the same thing as negative reinforcement, and that is not the same thing as negative punishment. So in order for us to have an intelligent conversation about learning theory and what we're trying to apply, we need to understand the difference between these.
We have another poll question. I want to encourage everybody out there in the audience to submit your questions to Dr. Bennett. We will be looking at those as we get closer through this presentation, and hopefully she'll have time at the end to address some of those. So get your questions in early. We'd appreciate it. And as far as the poll question, have you ever trained a cat? please answer on your screen, yes, I tried, or no. So have you ever trained a cat? Let's see what the audience says. Yes, that's interesting, isn't it?
That's awesome. I love that almost half of you have been able to train a cat before, and I love even more that over 16% of you have tried. So this is perfect because we're going to go through some of these steps and maybe help you troubleshoot a little bit to make it a little bit more successful for you. And those of you who haven't tried yet, after this lecture tonight, I challenge you to go home and try to train a cat, even if it's one simple behavior. Once you start, you're never going to be able to stop because it is so much fun.